I'm saying, so like, say if you sell drugs to get out the hood, nobody forgets that.
Do you
Catching up with
really
so
do you really do people sell drugs and then get out the hood? Is that how that works? Or do you people really become more like rappers and then get out the hood?
One of the most problematic terms in mainstream media is that of black on black crime, which perpetuates a false narrative that blacks are innately more violent than other groups. On this week's episode of the Infusion Breakdown Show, the Breakdown crew sat down amongst ourselves to discuss why is the term black on black crime still used? I'll see what we come up with.
Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce to you our Black-owned Business of the Week, where we showcase quality Black-owned businesses for you to support every week. This week's business is Sauces and Seasons by Marissa Gray. Sauces and Seasons specializes in Caribbean flavors infused with spices of Grenada, with authentic pepper sauce and even sea moss teas. Be sure to visit their Etsy shop and check out their selection.
So the question we have for today, why is the term black on black crime still used? Comment below, let us know. As always, we also have the timestamps in the description below. Don't forget to check them out.
All righty, fellas. So I'll go ahead and I'll get everything started for us. Um, I'm pretty sure talking about black on black crime in 2020, it's really nothing new, but to you know put it at this particular time in the year, one thing that really made me think about this really hard was a conversation that I had with one of the guys that I play Xbox with on we had around election time, and it was more or less he had more of a a right wing kind of view to where he supported Trump, but not necessarily the racist rhetoric of Trump. But at the same time, you could tell that he had been indoctrined enough to where he was using terms like black on black violence and using that to justify the crime bill while also simultaneously saying that Joe Biden and Bill Clinton and all these politicians that black people constantly put their faith into, these were the ones that were essentially doctoring those bills. And so thinking about black on black crime, having the background I have in political science, also taking a few sociology classes as well, it kind of made me dawn on why are black people still using this as a term to, justify um, their stance with right wing politics, or we just say, conservative politics. And so just taking a look back on when everything started, really black on black crime was a term that was used first and foremost by black people, but it wasn't used with the intention of or with the intent that it now has today. Just looking back at a few article that we'll have attached with the show today, it was actually first brought forth in like the 1970s when you had your civil rights activists and just activists in general, going to Washington or, state legislation and bringing up the concern about the amount of deaths that have been happening in black neighborhoods as a result of black people. And they were essentially pinpointing that these deaths are happening within these communities because they're either A, over police, or B, under police. And because of this dysfunction between the two, you see a consistent rise within these deaths that are happening amongst other blacks by blacks. So um taking that into consideration, the true origin of the term, yes, it has some validity, but at the same time, with the intention behind it, we kind of bring it forth today where we will actually look at the term and we realize that black on black violence, while it does exist, it's in a mythological standpoint because um, black on black violence in itself is just a byproduct of the residential segregation and concentrated poverty that our communities are undergoing, from the early 19th century up till today. And I mean, you can easily even base it all the way back to, slavery days. So essentially, when you have what we would call as black on black violence or black on black crime, these black men are only killing each other because they're not killing each other based off the merit of their skin. They're killing each other based off of the body that is in the closest vicinity to theirs. And when you're in a heavily concentrated area full of black people, there are no white people for you to rob. There are no white people in your ghettos. And if there are white people in your ghettos, it's a very, very small percentage. And even then, they're typically moving out to other, white ghettos. Like your black ghetto and your white ghetto, they're two completely different things. and then also in another to kind of tie in the origin as well. Um, when this term was first coined, there was a Chicago columnist named Warren Saunders. He was invited to speak at a seminar on what was newly coined as Black on Black violence. So he reached out to members of the Black community. And he was essentially told by these members of the community that are partaking in this crime is that if I go up to a white suburb and commit a crime, the man police is going to be on me within a matter of seconds. But if I commit a crime within the Black community, the chances of me getting caught are extremely unlikely. So the crime is there to be committed in these white communities, but the likelihood of being caught is a lot higher than committing them in the Black communities. So you kind of have to look at it from that perspective, in the sense of Black on Black violence. It has existed, but it has happened because of, this racial segregation, residential segregation, and then the poverty, the extreme poverty that has came with that. But I'll let you guys chime in a little bit just so we can get the ball more rolling. That's more or less just where everything starts from what I could find.
That's interesting because when I was looking into this, I did come across. I can't find the site or anything like that at the moment. I'm gonna continue to keep looking, but I saw a mention of that term much earlier than the 1970s.
It is. You're correct. It is a lot earlier than the 1970s, but
Okay.
in the 1970s, that's when the printing press got hold of it. That's when you started seeing it on your newspapers, and then in the 90s, that's when it started being introduced into policy with with the crime bill.
But what I had
Like
saw was
it,
something from the late 1800s in the
yeah.
newspapers, and like they would
I've
have
seen,
misleading titles. It would say like it would be if you read the article, you'd see that it was committed by a white person, but the title said "Black on Black crime." So people, you know how most people like reading is
yeah,
a pastime for the minority of people. So you just look at the headline, you just see the tag, you see the murder, and so you see
right,
that it's a misnomer and it's intentionally misleading. That's how I
exactly.
saw the origin of it.
And yeah, I saw that as well, but I also look at the origin of how it's like used today. Like we specifically talk on black crime because of the mass killings in Chicago and New York or wherever else, or LA, where it's often committed by a black person against a black person. So I'm just looking at it in that concept of when this was brought to the masses, that's around the time that it caught that fire to where it was described as what it truly is perceived to be today.
Right.
And I say perceived to be because
With the onset of mainstream media, and then also when it began to affect legislation.
exactly. Because you're right, even in the article that we'll have attached, they do mention that we've seen it as early as the late 18th century. But when we're actually tying it into and you're absolutely right, it was used in the late 18th century, and even in the article it says that it was used by white sociologists as a method to kind of distort the numbers, to kind of tie criminality to black people.
Right.
Are you saying black on black crime or violence isn't an issue, or are you saying white on black crime is more important?
No, I'm not saying either one. I'm saying it is an issue, but the way that it's categorized, like it's kind of pushed as this rebuttal. Like black people want X, Y, and Z. They want the equality. Well, how can you want your equality when you're killing each other? Well, we're killing each other because it's a result of everything we've said before, or everything I've said before. The racial segregation, the concentrated poverty that is then catastrophic within these segregated areas that are predominantly African American minorities, like
The socioeconomic issue.
social exit, socioeconomic issue. I know we've been saying that a lot in the past couple of episodes, but yeah, it's definitely a socioeconomic issue. And then one thing that I haven't experienced extreme poverty. Like I've grown up in a suburb my entire life, so I'm not gonna act like I understand, but I have spent summers with my grandparents who live in areas like this. And what I'll say is that you know they're no more comfortable with crime than the white people that are creating these false narratives. But it's like when you're in that area and you have no means to get out of that area, it's just a rat race. So does the black community in a way accept the crime for what it is? It does, but they are also accepting it because of the socioeconomic issue that comes with it. Change is always started by mouth, but it's implemented by money and force. And that force can either be by, means of brutality, or it could be by means of efficiency, to where you're able to implement these programs that are able to come into the community and make a change off the rip. And the black community, it gets it, but it gets it in like small doses. Like, we'll see heightened insight on what goes on in the black community. We'll see people call for change, and then it's kind of swept under the rug. And then we'll see it again. Like, same thing we've been seeing kind of with like police brutality. Like, it comes to the forefront. Everybody's on the train. You have your extreme activists who are already fighting for this issue and are able to bring in, the ignorant and the naive and inform them on what is. But those ignorant and naive, yes, they become less ignorant and less naive, but that's not their mission. Their mission isn't to help people that look like them. Their mission is to simply be educated on what's going on. So education without, actually implementing what you're learning is useless. It's kind of like, your 4-year degree, you have a 4-year degree in political science, but you're making your living as a manager at McDonald's. Like, you're essentially assessing or accumulating the tools to make that change, but you're not putting forth the effort to make that change. It's kind of like one of those things to where, your black people that leave the ghetto, they leave the ghetto, they get all that education, but they never bring it back. They then indoctrinate themselves with, white suburbia and, you know, anything and everything that is mainstream. But I also say at the same time, another reason why I can understand, you know, black on black violence is, or I'm sorry, not black on black violence, but understanding the hierarchy that you kind of have within the ghetto is, like I said to Brian a few episodes back, like, everything that it has happened has had a blueprint. If you look at the mafia and how it operated, like, who doesn't who doesn't want that type of organization or that structure within their neighborhood? But then you also look at, anytime there has been a black power front, even with your Panthers, it gets blown up from the inside out. Like, the government identifies that as a threat, but the government doesn't. They might identify these mob bosses as a threat, but they're not a threat to the greater good because they're able to keep their community organized. But when the government looks at a black organization in itself, they immediately view that as a threat, because an educated black man is what?
Dangerous.
One of the most dangerous things on this planet.
Lethal.
So, exactly. So, I can understand that as well. And then when you factor in that these ghettos are in not the country, not middle class suburbia, but they're oftentimes smack dab in the middle of your metropolis. You see Mercedes, you see Ferraris driving down the street, you see BMWs driving down the street, and all you can do is think either A, man, I want that, or B, how do I get that? How you get it and you just wanting it, those are two separate things. So then that's where you have your your mindset of either by force or by time. And by time is essentially doing what you got to do over the course of time to accumulate it. But even then, that's not even favorable.
Des, I'm actually really glad you brought up how the term black on black crime is currently used. Like, I always see it offered as a retort anytime somebody claims wrongdoing on the behalf of, or that's done to black people, let's say like a police murder. And then somebody will use it, they'll bring it up to them, but any other time you really don't hear that term floating around in mainstream conversation. But you also bring up another point too that I kind of want to talk about people leaving the ghetto when they make it big or become successful or famous. And it goes back to a Jay-Z interview that I saw. I watch a lot of those. And he said someone asked him how come he never purchased Marcy Projects before and revamped it. And he said for that reason, that it's not a money issue. You can dump all the money you want to in that community, but it's a mindset issue. And I think that goes back to the fact of it's not strictly economic, it's socioeconomic, because there's people that comprise that machine there. And then I think to another interview I saw what Boosie was saying that most rappers get killed in their own city. Like you think about Soldier Slim, and then like even recently Mo3. I hope I'm saying it correctly, but it's like and then Nipsey Hussle's like they get killed where they're at. So I kind of see why they're a little hesitant to stay in the areas that they're in. Like sometimes that's the best choice for you to, if you really want to help the people, sometimes you got to get out the area. It doesn't mean that you forsake it completely, but you see people alongside you that see you being successful, and like you said, it could be a rat race, and then so that puts a target on you. You can't help, you can't be a benefit to your community if you're dead.
Yeah, but I also say at the same time though, like the people that made it out of the hood didn't do it by means of good. So you
Who are
got
you
to think that
referring to?
those, like I'm saying, so like say if you sell drugs to get out the hood, nobody forgets that. Say if you sold drugs, got caught up, and then started rapping about you selling drugs to get out the hood, like you still have those ties. Like
Right.
your demons and your enemies, they don't just dissolve because you've left the life behind. Like they're still there. So if you come back to it, it's easy for you to get, I guess, sucked back up into that life, or somebody taking your life because of that.
Do you
Catching up with
really?
you.
So
Do you really? Do people sell drugs and then get out the hood? Is that how that works, or do you people really become more like rappers and then get out the hood?
That's, and then also there's a third option too, because I think growing up among like young black men specifically, like we tend to gear ourselves towards music. Desmond, you hit it right on the head with that, and then sports.
yeah,
So with that, you don't really have the negative side effects of people, I guess, ghost haunting you with the sports thing. But I'm curious what your answer to Josh's question is there.
I mean, I think that they sell drugs to reside in a different area outside of the hood, but at the end of the day, their business is done in the hood.
Really think that?
I mean, you ain't
I don't
finding
think
no
people. I don't think
you
people
ain't
sell
finding no
drugs and
loss.
then people don't sell
I,
drugs and then get out the hood though. Like you don't
well,
sell
what I'm
drugs,
saying
you
is,
don't make
It's
enough
not some,
money.
I'm
Like
no,
yeah,
no.
I'm
What I'm
out. I
you
got
what
my
got a
I'm
house
no, no.
now.
What
retirement
I'm
plan.
Yeah,
no, no. So what I'm saying is like if you amass the funds to get out of the hood, like your Frank Lucases, they weren't living in the projects with them. They was living in 20
it's a
bedroom
kingpin though.
mansions.
I feel that's
It,
different than just a regular
but that's what
kingpin.
I'm referring to though. Like we're
Okay,
talking about like change. Like of course your nickel and diamonds, they're not making it out of the hood.
okay, that's
Like
what I'm
they're
referring to.
staying.
Okay,
But what we're talking about is people that make it out of the hood by means of drug money.
But
They're
think
not
about making
staying in the hood.
it out
Like
of the
you're not finding no
lifestyle.
loft in the hood. Say it again.
Like I said, thinking about making it out of the lifestyle though. Like the idea, I think it was a Killer Mike interview where I'd seen about, he was saying, people, they'll hustle in order to get by and amass funds, but at a certain point in time, you have to have an exit strategy. So like for what that looks like is for you leaving, like let's say you hustle, let's say you got 10 grand, and then I'm not condoning any of this, I'm just saying this is what he said. So they have some money, and then so taking that and creating a legal business, but that's not what we see going on. Like not, I would say in the majority of cases, it's not like saying that they take the legal route of become entrepreneurs in that way.
But I would also argue that that's the socioeconomic issue, though. Like, think about how, like I think we
Exactly.
said this like either 1 or 2 weeks ago. Like, um, I forgot what the number. Dang, I said it. I know I said it on the podcast. Like, there's X number of businesses you start for that one successful business.
I was at 1 in 7, I think was your
Yeah,
statistic.
1 in 7. So there's the odds associated with that, and then also the hood isn't like an epicenter of business. It is what it is. It's the hood, and then at the same time, like to start a business, you have to understand tax, and that's where the socioeconomic issue comes into play. Where your black people not being educated on what is like. Yeah, you say, oh well, these black people have so much money they could just start a business. Well, do those black people know how much money that they have to have? Or how much money that they're allowed to, I guess, move around without catching the IRS's attention? Because you're essentially saying, "Hey, we're going to start up this 6-figure business," and then expect the IRS not to ask any questions.
I see your point, but the point that I was making too, that it was deeper than economics. There's also a
Yeah,
mindset, because you have two options. Like I can give you, let's say you have that 100 grand, or you said 600 grand, however much you said, you have that much money. So, I mean, that's a hell of a lot of money. You can have an exit strategy, you can take it a legal way, or you can continue to do what you're doing. That's ultimately a choice, and it's also affected by the resources and knowledge you have accessible to you.
Yeah, and I agree to the extent of there is a legal way to continue making that money because there are modern day, black market currencies. There are, you have forex, you have stocks, you have all this stuff that you can do anonymous and continue to make that money. But and to do it in a legal way that benefits the community brings on, I would say, or I'm not going to say I would say, I would think provides a spotlight that that individual wouldn't want, because with that spotlight there comes scrutiny, and with scrutiny there becomes those people that want to dive into how is this money accumulated. And then you literally end right back where we started at with the black on black thing. It was introduced with good intentions to the mainstream by Jesse Jackson and all your activists, bringing these issues forth to government. But you get the people that make the biggest assumptions, that have the most power, that can easily contort that image. Like this man, you're like essentially it's the Pablo Escobar thing. Like Pablo Escobar was known for rebuilding ghettos in his community. But the second the government, or I'm not gonna say the second the government, but the second I guess you could say mainstream got whiff and he started, going after the politicians, and that's when that image of him changed. Then that's when you kind of have, the DEA coming in a lot harder. That's when you have the Colombian government coming harder. Like there's always going to people there's always going to be that person that knows the right thing to say to push the wrong person or right person. Like just imagine if you are the individual, you're saying you have 600,000, you're pumping in great business for the black community, and then a right wing politician or left wing politician comes in and they know all the right buttons to push. You being that kingpin or that very very lucrative, you know, drug dealer, you more than likely have buttons that nobody wants to push. Like you haven't accumulated that fund, you haven't got your corners, you haven't gotten your roots off of for nothing. Like you're typically known to handle things by force, and then the right person or the wrong person says the right thing because they know how you got that fund.
Yeah. I think I think there's really no secret that. Well, first of all, I agree with really what Desmond said, and really what Brian said too. I really agree with a lot of it, but I think there's really no secret that the notion that Black people are inherently violent has been used to justify our mistreatment since really the end of slavery. uh, and really in an attempt to cover up that mistreatment, they throw black on black crime in people's faces. And black on black crime is usually insinuated that black people don't care about the death of other black people by the hands of each other. But people have to realize that black people don't kill other black people because they're black, like Desmond said, and because they're inherently violent or anything like that, which is what black people are talking about when cops gun down unarmed black people. Uh, Black people usually kill other black people over respect and socioeconomic issues, like Desmond said, and that's usually because they've been denied that throughout generations in society. And people usually bring up Chicago as an example, but the socioeconomic atmosphere there is bad. Desmond touched on that really well too. And if you don't have that much, you're more than likely going to result into crime to really get ahead. So if they want to help with black on black crime, they should really help with the socioeconomic issue first, and then work in those communities to help change the behavior to break generational curses. Because even if the socioeconomic status change, if the behavior stays the same, if the same behavior stays the same, history is really sure to repeat itself. So, but yeah, I agree really what you guys were saying really. But one of the other questions I had was, do you think white people not know it's a socioeconomic issue?
I think white people don't ever know what they can't see.
Can you
Like
explain that?
think about how I was saying, like, I've grown up predominantly in middle class neighborhoods, but I've spent summers with my grandparents who come in these unfavorable conditions to where I'm seeing firsthand how what we're talking about affects not just my generation, but their generation as well. Like I have firsthand visual experience, not necessarily firsthand actual experience, to where like I can actually see the negatives associated with it and what the mindset is. white people don't see that. I think the closest they see it is what's allowed in movies.
Are you referring to like the white people in power too? They don't see that either.
I would say that those white people in power are the same white people that are ignorant.
Okay, I
Like
was making sure.
that ignorant white person is just elevated to a white person in power. Like,
Okay, that's all I was making sure. Okay.
yeah.
I do kind of want to add on to the idea about what's being portrayed and I guess being ignorant. So I've seen there was a documentary on Netflix, I think, or perhaps it was YouTube, but it was a documentary nonetheless on like the KKK and showed the contrast between someone who believes in that ideology and then I guess normal people. And like the people in the KKK, they had like their family get together. They were having dinner one night, and they were at the table, and they were bringing up actual facts, like about the house, like as a consequence of the Housing Act of 1934 and redlining. And they would say, okay, well, redlining is no longer a thing because it was outlawed and whatever. And then Ben Shapiro, for example, he did a video debunking uh, the idea of redlining and some other things in that video. And it's like, okay, you have like the actual law, you understand that it was the Housing Act of 1934, but you're misinterpreting that data, and you're saying that okay, since um, this was outlawed, that these practices are no longer in play, or they had no long-lasting effects. So it's like they have they have the foundation. They understand they're not completely ignorant of that, but they're totally misrepresenting with the information that's provided to them. So it's kind of like taking the data you want and then using it to spin your own narrative. So it's like you ultimately nullifying the existence of discrimination when it comes to people's demographics in certain locations, saying that okay, because you can't redline people, you can't raise the property values in certain areas based upon race. Well, you don't understand that when people don't have money to the degree where they can have mobility and move around and stuff like that, that people tend to stay where they're already at. And then like what Desmond was saying earlier, I also like this is I guess a really document reference heavy episode, but I had also saw another documentary from a professional robber, and this was actually a white guy, but he was talking about the criminal mindset. He was saying that most robbers, when you rob people, you're going around your community, so it's like a certain mile radius. You're not going 30 miles out, 50 miles out, 100 miles out and committing robberies because you think about it, that's typically what they do, like clockwork. They're doing it repeatedly. It's not something you do once, like you're going on like a weekend trip or something like that. It's a repeated behavior. So it's like what you were saying about the fallacy of black on black crime is that it's totally limited to the fact that people really only commit crimes in their own locus, and who do other black people live next to. It's the same thing with white folks. Like you're more likely to be victimized by people who are in a similar socioeconomic condition because that's who you live next to.
If black on black crime was a thing, you would hear Latino on Latino crime. You would hear all the other
Right.
type of crime. Like, come on. Like, so yeah, that's
I
ridiculous.
think that was really ridiculous because so back in I guess right after I graduated high school, there was a point in time where I used to engage in the occasional back and forth Facebook spat, and I think that somebody said something about black on black crime, and so I asked like when you have a car accident, and this was a guy who was defending the stance, and he had said that, and I asked him when there's a car accident, do they say like Honda on Honda, and he said yeah. And he said, yeah, anytime a crime is committed or something like that, they use that as reference data to report and to do statistics on. But that's not exactly what I'm saying. Like Josh, what you were saying, when a white person kills another white person, you don't see the tagline say white on white crime. You don't see any politicians say that that needs to stop. You don't see like when there's a mass shooting and they say, okay, this white on white crime is out rampant. You don't see
Yeah,
that.
and it happens. White on white crime happens more than black on black crime because there's more white people. But yeah, do you believe that if white people knew it was a socioeconomic issue, they would change it?
No, because it
Okay.
doesn't benefit them. It
Okay.
doesn't benefit them because this isn't like a front of the line issue for them. Like they're more concerned with setting the next generation up or getting the next piece of land or just whatever it is that white people do. Like I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know what white people do because I don't. But
Why?
I'll also say at this.
No, keep going. You was about to
Well,
say
I
also.
also say at the same time, essentially what I said before, like education without the act or the follow up action is worthless. Like I'm pretty sure there's countless of number of white people that have seen any of these movies that we're talking about, but you know that doesn't necessarily spike their concern with what's going on in the black community. It's what sells. Like case in point, we have what's the show? Snowfall. Snowfall's on FX. It was just new season coming out next year. Like these aren't black people that's keeping these shows afloat. Like there's white people that watch it too. It's more or less just consumed for their own recreational purposes. You say? Like it's consumed for fun rather than consumed for knowledge. Like we consume it as knowledge of what is and then what was, whereas they're like consuming it of just like I don't know how they consume it. But they have the means to get there. Like you don't have to go through a 4-year degree to understand economics. You don't have to go through a 4-year degree to learn how to speak Spanish. Like these are all things that these are all skills or knowledge that you can obtain on your own by simply going to Bloomberg or going to Google and typing in these keywords and then reading articles that are published by these decorated individuals. Like the information is there. There's just not a desire to consume it. And if there is a desire to consume it, it's just drawn up as a loss. Like, oh, well, that community is so far, from where we are. Like they need way more than help. And
You know,
essentially, like, go ahead.
I think what you're saying also is also a mindset problem on the opposite side, like the way that they interpret the information. Because within reason, I feel like when the least of us do better, everyone does better. And so that's the idea. That's why companies share intellectual property. Josh, what are you looking like that for?
They don't believe that shit.
No. I'm saying that's not the way they look at it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
No.
saying. So like
Okay.
they don't understand it. Like that does reflect on how we do as a nation, how the people at the quote unquote bottom, or the people who have the roughest conditions, how they're doing. And so by raising them up, then you ultimately raise up the entire nation as a whole. That's why I said I believe within reason that. But and for that same reason, that's why like businesses they do. There's exchanges of intellectual property. I know that Microsoft, Apple did a deal because it was more beneficial for them moving forward to have that in place. And then I know like different countries share medical research because okay, Japan is doing research on COVID, for example, and the United States is doing research on COVID, but we can get closer to finding a solution if we share that research. So it's kind of like that same thing if you apply it to people, and if the white people who feel that are threatened by black people doing better, they're looking at a very skewed perspective, an incorrect perspective, saying that if black people do better, it means I'm doing worse. It means no. If the black people do better, then we all do better. And that's what I was saying was a mindset issue on the other side.
Okay. What?
I
So
think
keep
I would
going.
say I
Go.
also think at the same time, like just touching on economics, like I think white people are more groomed, or I don't know if groomed is what the word I want to use, but they're more okay with this working for 40, 50 years and then retiring thing. Like I know for people my age, or I'm not gonna say people my age, but people that I've hang around, like that working for 40 to 50 years to retire with $2 or $3 million, like that shit just seems like a sad way to go out. So I think that like it creates this image of black people being lazy where it's just like, no, like what you are asking us to do for the amount of money that we're getting for it is just it doesn't make any sense. And like a lot of these jobs that are now requiring 4-year degrees, like you're continuously raising the bar. Like you're now making it harder for those uneducated black people to get those jobs and to keep them in the environment that they're in. But then you're also requiring 4-year degrees as a minimum to fill these unfavorable positions that, like, for example, at ADP, there's a lot of black people that work at ADP. I couldn't imagine myself working at ADP for 40 years. But there are people that are in leadership roles that will gladly, and those people that are in leadership roles don't look nothing like I could see somebody, wanting to work 40, 50 years making 70 to 150,000 a year. Like, okay, you're living well above the poverty line, but yet the person that's on the very beginning of day one, yeah, you're paying them a lot higher than the next competitor, but that lot higher might be 85 cents.
So
So
just
then,
just to make
go
sure that
ahead.
I'm clear on what you're saying before you go on to the next part, you're saying that Black people are more conditioned to being in jobs like that for 40 years, being in traditional jobs.
No, I'm saying white people are.
White people, okay.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is like you have like the poverty issue because I mean I'll say this is more or less just like a very very biased opinion, but I just look at it and I say to myself like we essentially come onto this earth, we work 40 years, we hope we have enough at retirement for 40 at the end of that 40 years, and then we die. Like that is just the saddest way to go out, in my opinion. Like there's so much more to do. But people in those communities, like they don't see that. Like they just see it as if I can get to that job. Like the position that I'm currently at would probably be, a Christmas gift to somebody else. Whereas this is just I'm thankful I have it. Like somebody else would be really, really appreciative of the position I have because it gives them an opportunity to bump up their economic status or whatever it may be.
Standard of
But
living.
for me, it's but say again.
Their standard of living.
Exactly. But for me, it's like man, we come into these positions, we're still underpaid. Like somebody might think this is really good money, but it's not good money because you also have to factor in taxes and what are a lot of Black people really ignorant about taxes. And then you also have to start factoring in credit. You start making good money, you get to that next social class, you start running up your credit cards. Well, if you don't got good credit, lenders aren't going to want to lend anything to you. So it's like one of those things where how we view we're essentially responsible to play a game that we never created. Like the whole world is essentially responsible for playing this game, but it's a game that I think that a lot of like people that look like me look at this game and they say, "Man, this is the dumbest thing ever." Like we're required to go to work for 40 years to make well below the means of living, and then we just die like that. I could understand why some people would find more comfort in being on the streets or just being in their environment because it's a place of comfort. Like you could say that, but just imagine you're able to be around your boys all day. Yeah, you might be starving, but it's a lot better than being on that phone or at that office for 8 hours a day, hating every single minute and every single second of it.
I'm not going to agree with that, but I can see I can
Jeez.
no I can see what you're saying about comfort. But if you look at the pros and cons of each, I can't say that that's better, or if put in that situation, that's what I would rather do. I'm not going to say that.
Eh, yeah, I mean exactly. Like neither one of us are going to say it because we're not in that predicament. But if you take somebody that's in that lower status, think about it. You take somebody that's in that lower status and you put them in our shoes. Yes, they are happy to make that money. But at the same time, when you become big brain and you realize just how much of a rat race you're in to where you're no longer in a rat race in the streets, you're now in a rat race within, corporate America or whatever it may be. Like it's the same shit, just a different change of scenery. So how many people are willing to sacrifice that?
How many people are willing to sacrifice their current living situation in
Yeah.
order to elevate themselves?
It, it sounds like a really, really obvious question. But at the same time, when you actually get to that predicament or you get into that situation, you look at the amount of work that you have to do, how many people are willing to do something that just feels redundant every day? Because you're already doing something that is super redundant. I guess you could say it's the balance of redundancy. Like,
The devil that you
make
know and the devil that you don't.
exactly. That's all I'm saying. Like, what we're doing right now, this is what we're going to do. Like, it's not because we have to do it. It's just the path we chose. But at the same time, like, you give this, not everybody's going to jump at that opportunity. Like, the opportunities are there. There's limitless opportunities. You might not see it in the area, but there's limitless opportunities everywhere. But when you get down to just the nitty gritty of how redundant this cycle of continuously going to work every day just to enjoy 2 days off and then be, either shit faced drunk or either very thankful of your situation, like that requires, again, such a mindset shift that not a lot of people have.
You have to want more. And like
Exactly.
even with us being people who, I guess all of us were what you traditionally consider to be middle class, but we have some aspiration of greater than that. Like that's how I would say that I was raised middle class. I don't know about you two. I'm just guessing based off that. And so like just thinking you can work your job making 60, 70,000 a year, Monday through Friday, go to work, the weekends you recover, and then on Monday it's back to the same thing. But it's what you do in your off hours what really determines like your path in life. Like you'll be stuck in there,
True.
or you could take that money and invest it in proper ways, or you can work on skills that are going to get you into a higher position. And but like you said, that takes work. So it takes a certain mindset to recognize that, and then go out and take that course of action.
True, true. And like I've like seen family members do. Like I've seen family members that have had great educational backgrounds go to these cities and just not be fulfilled and go right back to where they were. Like you were making tens of thousands of dollars more doing what you were doing in one of these big name cities, but the lack of fulfillment with it, just feeling like you're living every day to die, you go back because there's comfort in that situation. Like that. That's all. That's essentially all I'm saying. Like I'm
Hmm.
saying that people, there's essentially beauty in every struggle. Like people learn to see the good in their situations, or they see the bad and they just learn to live with it because that's what they know. So if you have somebody that has that frame of mind and you put them into an environment like we have, they're not going to appreciate it the same way that we do. So
Right.
that's essentially all I'm saying.
I mean, case in point, there was think of the people who get offered athletic scholarships but deny them on the behalf because they say the school is not for them, or because they want
Exactly.
to, like there's a specific person that I was told about that they said that they wanted to live that street life and that they didn't want to go to school even though that the school was offering them a full scholarship for athletics. And it's like they were more comfortable in what they were currently had because it was the environment that they grew up in,
You
and
see?
they were familiar with. I do see what you're saying, but I mean that only goes back to say what we were both saying earlier about
Yeah,
it
yeah.
being a mindset and like recognize that like what we're doing with this. Like we all have full time jobs, but this podcast is extracurricular to that. Anything else we do is outside of that. It's something that we're taking the initiative to do to better ourselves and change our situation, change our
Yeah.
lives.
I just wanted you to keep talking so you could essentially reaffirm what I said because you was like, nah, I can't agree with that just from a personal level. But then you went on it like there's actually examples that you've seen and that I've seen to where people have been offered these better than where we're at opportunities, but
Hmm.
have turned them down. Like, man, I would have loved to have gone to school out of state on a full
For
ride or
free.
just exactly. But there's comfort in the comfort of where you're at. Like that's
I do see it, but I think there is what I was hesitant about to say earlier, and I will agree with you. I'm not going to refute that much, but I think there is some degree of apprehension to it too. It's like where you're currently at isn't necessarily the best option or the best place, but it's more comfortable. So it's kind of like when we have like the past few elections we had, like the lesser of two evils. That's how I see it as perceived. I don't think it's always I love this shit. Like I love where I'm at right now. It's more so I'm familiar with this. I can deal with this. It's not great, but I know how to work with this. I can manage. Versus somewhere where I'm going to be uncomfortable and have to adapt my skill set and learn new things, be around new people in a new environment where I'm totally alien to, where I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not. That was my point. Is I don't think that there is.
true.
I think the difference was the enthusiasm or the outlook of the situation, that whether it was optimistic or pessimistic. But you're 100% right, excluding that last part. But you had asked, well, you had I want to ask you now. You had mentioned that white people are conditioned to be in a career for 40 years, and this is, of course, a generalization. Like if somebody's watching and say, "Okay, I wasn't conditioned for," okay, cool, not talking about you. But so if you're using that generalization, you're saying culturally they're conditioned to be content with those kind of jobs, like being in careers for 40 years, whereas black people, they want to kind of escape from that lifestyle. Why is there a difference between the two demographics? what would you attribute that to?
I mean, I I think the question is, what can't you attribute it to? Because I would just say it like this: there's this well-known narrative that Black people have to be twice as good for the same rate of pay or same opportunity as that white person. The white person is more or less just doing what mom or dad did, doing what my brother did, taking the opportunity that was given to me and being thankful for it. Whereas we have to work twice as hard to break the same bread. And when you get that bread, you take a bite of that shit, and there's nothing extravagant about it. Like, I've spent 18-hour days going to school, working full time, this, that, and third, for the same amount of bread or less than that person that was just gifted that job. So I think they're more or less conditioned by opportunity, whereas we are trying to be conditioned by lack of opportunity. Like, we're being told we have to go and do this 40 years of time, basically. We have to go do this 40 years, 40, 50 years. But when we get our first taste, it's McDonald's or it's Autobell or it's these jobs that you have to work at till you're 23, 24 years old, making, $7.50 or $10 an hour. Like, our first taste of getting into this working for the rest of our life is we have to be twice as good for the same amount of pay, but the opportunity isn't the same. So I think it's more
fatigue.
Essentially. Like, I will tell you firsthand, like, when I got my first job, when I got my first job, like, I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. But I noticed that people that didn't look like me were getting promoted in half the time. Like, I'd be at the job for, 9 months, somebody come in at the 4 or 5 month mark, they're already at contention to be an assistant manager. But I can do everything better, from selling, because at Autobell we had to sell wash packages, to detailing. Like, I had people that would come up to Autobell and specifically ask me to wipe their car down. These people that are in contentions are people that I taught, and then go and do the same thing that I'm doing, but at half the pace, half the rate. Like, they're more or less just going through the motions because I've given them the insider of what you need to do to just be good at what you do. But they don't do it at the same rate that I do it. So then they take that half volume and then they get more opportunity, whereas I'm going full volume and I'm still scraping the bottom of the barrel. That's essentially what I mean. Like, there, like you said, you hit it spot you hit the nail right on the head with that. Like, there's a fatigue that comes with it. So, 3 years into the job, like, I'm in contention to be assistant manager again. I don't get it, but I'm still making good money. But there's a lack of fulfillment. So I got tasked to do something that I didn't want to do, and I just walked off the clock. And guess what? Had to start right back at the bottom again. So it's just one of those things to where, like, we have to be twice as good for half the opportunity. Whereas for another person, you might just have to come in and do the bare minimum of what you're supposed to do, and you'll get that opportunity. And then don't get me wrong, after you get the opportunity, there's still the scrutiny there, because there's all those narratives that, oh, well, Black people are lazy. Like, there's these things that white people hear and subconsciously think about. Like, anytime somebody calls out for work at the very last minute, and it's just all those things. Like, there's so many negative narratives associated with Black people that causes white people to have either unsolicited or solicited bias towards us, to where those opportunities or mishaps aren't treated the same way as our counterparts. So it's like we're already in the race, we're running, but we got Timmy, Tommy, and Chucky in the crowd shooting Nerf darts at us while we're running full speed, and they're letting Matthew just run by, unabridged.
Did you want to say something else to that, Brian?
To that specific point, Not as much. I was in the process of formulating another question. It was coming to me. I'm curious about what are you guys' thoughts on um black people who, like, in instances where there is public outrage about things that are going on in the black community, and then black people calling for change, and they mention black on black crime. What are your thoughts on that? Like, the idea of wanting us as a group, as a community, to hold ourselves to a higher standard, as we also pursue equality when it comes to treatment by the law and other things in life. But I think Terry Crews is an example. Didn't he make a tweet
Yeah,
earlier this year about
he,
that? And then people jumped on
he
his
did.
ass.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that people that call for change and implicit black on black violence as something that needs to be addressed, I would challenge them to look at the full picture rather than just the current situation. Because anybody that is looking just at a masterpiece, like you might fall in love with just one part of it, but like you look at the Mona Lisa. Like when we look at the Mona Lisa, it's a basic ass picture, but there's people that fall in love with different aspects of the Mona Lisa. People love to fall in love with this rhetoric of black on black violence because it's what looks the best to them. But when you are then gifted this insight of other great aspects of this picture, you're able to factor in gentrification. You're able to factor in, I mean, we can literally just stop at gentrification because we can easily just look at how many new high rises are being, built up in, like, they're essentially, I think there's something that they're doing in downtown Norfolk. I don't know if they're
The
moving
area.
those projects. Yeah, I think they're
Hmm.
moving those projects. Like, that's the easiest thing to look at. Like, disenfranchisement is like, I wouldn't want to imagine what that feels like, because you already feel like, as a black man or a black woman or black child in an impoverished society, that the world is already against you. And then for them to just tell you, hey, pack your shit up, we're going to another location, and it's going to be off secluded, in another ghetto. Like, I couldn't imagine what that feels like. But then you also have to factor in, I think everything we already said. What is it? Residential segregation, and then the poverty that comes with it. Like, those are things that these people like to just ignore and talk about the violence. Nobody likes to look at the precursor to these killings. Like, these precursors just don't go to, hey, he said the wrong thing to me, or you know he shorted me on whatever. They These things start from the top and go down to the bottom. They don't
They're only
start at the bottom
concerned
and
with the
rise
right
up.
side of the equation.
Mhm.
Josh,
Exactly.
what are your thoughts? I mean, because really, Desmond, I see what you're saying about the big picture, and I don't innately see anything like when people say things like blacks should stop killing each other, which is, I mean, that's a great thing. If black people as a whole, if we were to commit less crimes against ourselves, or less crime, the people who are committing crimes do that less, if we were able to lower that, that's on paper, that's a great thing. But I think my problem with that um, is timing. Is exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, it's offered as a retort. It's like, okay, it's done. Like, I understand if that's your mission, or that's what you understand, that's what your way of achieving equality is, but it's done in a way to negate progress in another way that's trying to be made. That's
It's
my issue
beautiful
with it.
that you said. It's beautiful that you said that, because my godbrother and I, we were talking just about the degrees of logic. Like, people are able to think very logically, but sometimes they're only able to scratch the surface on logic. They think of something that sounds good, but then when you ask them to divulge a little bit more, or you ask them to expand on that logic, they don't possess the ability to. So what you just said, hey, blacks stop killing each other, that is a beautiful statement. But somebody will respond to you, well, how do you stop that? Everybody draws a blank. The question would be, how do you, if we're still using the term black on black violence as a rational term, how do you stop black on black violence, or say stop black on black violence? The rebuttal is always going to be why or how, not why, how. Who can actually
And the
give you
question
that
should be
answer?
why. The question should be why, is what I think you're getting at. Because then you start to look at the factors that are into account when these things do
Yeah,
happen that create these conditions and environments.
exactly. So actually, you're right. It's actually both. It's how and why. When you ask the people how, there's no answer. But if you ask the people why, then like you perfectly said, like there's everything that we've touched on is going to be the why.
I think a
Joshua, what
lot
are your
of
thoughts?
I think a lot of those people are just been too heavily influenced by one side. They just don't have the not really the mental capacity. They're just too controlled by one side. Because I would say the biggest thing you do is just open yourself up to how both sides think and how both sides try, at the very least, try to understand the other side. Because I remember this is probably up until like probably this year or early this year. I used to say, man, I could never be friends or even like talk to somebody who's Republican because I feel at that point they don't care about my well being because you know how Republicans are against black people. Uh, but I just try to as I've gotten through this year, I just try to understand the other side more, especially with Donald Trump being president and everything like that. Just trying to understand why they chose to vote for him and where that actually comes from. It's not always about race; it's about like selfishness too. It's about what he gives to them. So, I would just really say the main thing is about that. Keep your mind open and yeah, don't be just so suppressed to this one side. Yeah.
Yeah. You hit you hit it right on the head with that one because I was just going to say, just in the grand scheme of things, life is about perspective, and
Yeah.
somebody's perspective or whatever it may be with the other side is a traumatic experience. Like you're not going to expect them to be able to rationalize with the other side. Like they're going to be extremely irrational, and they're only going to side with what makes sense to them. So I understand it, but then at the same time, it's like the rebuttal is our experience with police is traumatic. Why are you expecting us to be rational to these responses by police when we're viewed as a irrational threat? And I say irrational threat because there is no clear and concise motive or evidence for you to deem us a threat. But at the same time, when we ask white people for the same seat at the table, there's this I don't want to say unprecedented, but there's this illogical fear associated with black people. And it's like we are what you we are what y'all made us to be. Like, yes, we are black African American males, females, children. We identify with who we are. But at the end of the day, you guys as white America have kind of set the tone for what we are. And y'all are fearful of what you created. So instead of being understanding of how we bridge a gap, there's more fear based and say, oh, well, maybe you should just comply with what we've already been doing. Like you guys have already been here for, X amount of years. You guys have already been part of the system, fully indoctrinated in it. And it's like perspective.
I do think that what you're saying about people they're being too indoctrinated by, I guess, people on one side is extremely true. That's the reason we feel a lot of issues. It's like when you are only hearing one side of the story, very rarely is one side ever completely right. There's nuance within everything. Like that's what Marco Perry is a really big proponent of, and I think we are here too, is breaking down and dissecting things in a thorough level, and then taking both elements and kind of like trying to synthesize the truth out of things. So like what you were saying, so there could be some merit to what people on the right are saying, people who are more conservative. But if you only rely on that, then you don't get the totality of it, and it's kind of like it's really easy to make ill-informed decisions.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to add? Brian, Des?
No, I think we expand on everything. I think we were able to talk about everything from a first-hand perspective. Like I would have loved to have been able to like get more insight from, you know, people that are actually going through it. Because I think even from our perspective, like we're able to try and give a perspective based off of a perspective, or at least give a perspective based off of understanding. But to actually hear from the people that are going through, the everything that we're talking about, like I think that would be I think that would do the world justice for real. Like a little bit over
Okay.
exaggerated, but I think well no, because there's ghettos in every country of the world. So I think it would do the world justice. Like, you know, there's enough money to go around.
The
Giving
the person
everybody had a seat at the table ain't a bad thing.
the person that started this whole thing, do you know that guy on Xbox, or you just met him randomly?
Yeah. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
have been. I'm not gonna say I'm cool with them, but we have been acquaintances since like my senior year of high school. Like he's in
Oh,
the
okay.
area, but I've never met him. A couple of my
Oh,
boys
okay.
have, but he's just an acquaintance I know through some people. But I will hold conversations with him because one thing that I will always respect is somebody that has the capacity to express why they feel the way they feel. A lot of people have these biases, but these biases they're not able to expand upon. Whereas if you have a bias I can expand upon, then I can respect your opinion or your perspective a lot more. Like I don't have to agree with it. There's nothing in this world that tells me, hey, you have to agree with everything that I say, and I have to agree with everything you say. But if you have the mental capacity to expand on your bias, whether you be the most racist person or the most loving person, then I can respect it because I know what to expect. It's one of those things to where I can go into combat with this person because I know what they're capable of. Rather than going into combat with somebody that's inexperienced and you don't have a lot of knowledge of that person or their character, then you place these false expectations, and like we were talking about last week, those false expectations are always going to set you up for that disappointment. Whereas if you have understanding whether you like that person or not, it breaks a barrier down.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. You got nothing else, right, Brian?
I'm fine.
No. Okay. You got an album of the week this week, Des?
Yeah. My album of the week, I think we're gonna take it back because it's probably what I'm gonna listen to when I go to the gym. It's gonna be "The Wizard" by Future.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Be sure to check it out. Also, if you guys like the discussion, don't forget to hit the like button. We're gonna see you guys next week. Peace.
But while you're here, be sure to check out other great content from the Breakdown crew, including previous episodes of the podcast, Joshua versus Movies, Joshua versus Music, and of course, haven't forgotten about my plant lovers, Feel the Love. Just check out this begonia.